that. Just by way of introduction, my name is Craig Wilkinson. I wrote a book called Force for Good, The Power of Healthy Masculinity. I'm joined by a very esteemed panel. Let's start with Marion Scher, ladies first. She wrote a book called Men and Mental Health, Shattering the Silence. Welcome and good to have you on board. And then we have Dr. Mzamo Masito, who wrote a very controversial sounding book. This country hates our men cross out boys. And boys, you're on your own. Welcome and thank you for being here. And finally we have Dr. Njabulo James Nkosi, who wrote Father of Man, the 5 Ideals to Build Better Men. And so welcome guys, and we're going to really do our best to squeeze everything in and open up. The topic of today, as it was advertised, is basically how to be a good, strong, positive, healthy, good man, father, mentor, role model, brother, uncle, how to be a good man. And we're all passionate about the topic. But Mary, perhaps I can start with you. One of the key things about being a good man is dealing with your inner stuff. None of us arrive at adulthood completely whole. So the journey from boy to man, the journey from girl to woman is a tough one, fraught with issues, but men tend to not talk about that as much as women. Please share with us why you think that is. You talk about breaking the silence. Men are silent. You're going to talk.
Thanks, Craig. Well, this is my 3rd book on mental health. So in the first book, I focused on 11 different people's stories on their journey with mental health, depression, and anxiety disorder, and so on. So I heard it over and over again. The 2nd book on bullying, and now Men and Mental Health. You know, in South Africa in particular, you've got to be the manna. South African men are supposed to be strong. And in Men and Mental Health, I interviewed people, top rugby players, Chadwick Clough, the famous Olympic swimmer, and so on. Now, if you look at these guys, wow, they're the ultimate South African sportsmen. You know, I interviewed comedians, David Kramer, lots of different people, all sorts of people, not just famous people. Every one of them said, you know, we were told by our fathers, you know, we were told by our peers at school, you've got to be strong, you're a man. Cowboys don't cry. And that kind of is their thinking.
Yeah, it's a tragedy. I've been involved with a couple of friends who committed suicide. My younger brother took his own life. And at one of the funerals, we were chatting, all a bunch of friends at this funeral, and we were asking, did you know that his name was Pete, was going through this? None of us knew. And so as men, we don't create the environment in which it's okay to speak out and talk. And it's something we do need to, you talk about shattering the silence. Mzamo, you know, you might know about boys grow up, the messages we hear as boys growing up. Hashtag men are trash, toxic masculinity, everything is a result of the patriarchy. Boys stay behind, you know. Tell us a bit more about that, the messages that we as men growing up as boys receive and the damaging impact that has on men.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would say that I think society, because we're more obsessed with physical violence, because that's more visual, we forget that violence is also verbal. So we have lots of verbal violence and virtuous hate, or I would say like verbal hate in this country. And we say it at boys at a young age who can't even disassociate their identity from their father. Especially a boy like me whose father was absent. So when you say your father is a dog, which is what I grew up being told. Now, if you say that to a boy, I'm not hearing my father is a dog. I'm hearing me and my father are dogs. Because I integrate his identity to me. Because that's how life works. Then, when I become a dog in old age, don't wonder why. Because you prophesied it anyway, that I am a dog. So now I am a dog, so pet me. Because you did it anyway. So that's the part that I struggle with, that boys at a young age, the amount of verbal violence that is muted to boys at a young age breaks boys. And then they go into silence. I have 15-year-olds, I was at JP Boys School yesterday. They are scared to speak. They're like, I can't speak because it's gonna be patriarchy, misogyny, toxic masculinity. They're gonna throw it at me, so I just keep quiet. I go on YouTube and listen to Tate, and listen to the Manosphere, Red Pill, and also do crypto, and do Forex, and do all of those things, because it's safe there. Whereas in the real world, somehow, whatever sins of their forefathers or fathers' boys have done, they also inherit them. And they get pluralized into a plural of radical pathologization at a young age. And that for me is scary.
Absolutely. Yeah. The impact it has on boys growing up is they will turn into the dogs that they were prophesied to be.
Yeah.
And why else would they not be like it?
Yeah, because you also bought us a gun.
Yeah.
You decided the best toy to buy me is a gun. You didn't even cross your mind the book was okay. and now you wonder when I learned to shoot. Who taught me that? So we are socialized into beings that don't cry, like you said. So we suffer from what we call alexithymia, where we have words without emotions. And then when you turn 40, someone says, be vulnerable. How are you feeling? Fuck, how am I going to do that when I didn't have the social tools at a young age to be? And boys are hugged less. By the time you turn 5, your mom, your dad, everyone not hugging you because we are preparing you to be men, not to be a human being. For some reason, our XY chromosomes have to kick in early. We are being prepared to be men. And then we wonder when you get a robot that is XY chromosome at 32, and you're like, oh, he's not vulnerable enough. How can he be? When no one taught him to be vulnerable.
The most terrifying thing a woman can say to her husband is, honey, we need to have a chat.
Yo.
He's out of it very quickly.
Crisis.
He's out of it very quickly, yeah. I work with a lot of boys at school, and I say to the young men, are you proud to be a man? And most of them say, yeah. I said, would you put that on social media? Oh, no. I said, why not? No, we'd be cancelled. And the tragedy of being cancelled for being who you are is a major one.
Yeah, it's huge.
The boys are left
I mean, I was speaking to 12 to 18-year-olds. They did research recently and asked them, when I say masculinity, what's the word that comes first? 70% of the boys said toxic.
Yeah.
And then they said, I don't want it. Give me another word. Because this one, it looks like it's been polluted.
Yeah.
We don't want to swim in this pond anymore. And then I said, so if you're not masculine, what are you then? And they're like, hey, dude, we haven't found another one, but give us another. And the other part for me is, it's not fair to pathologize 49% of your population as if the other 51% is only sainthood, has no Luciferian malevolent tendencies, is only sainthood and heaven. There's no hell that side. And this side is just hell. And all we do, we are a pebble and a thorn in society's shoe. And we're nothing else. We don't do good. All we are is just pathology. We like COVID-19. And so that's the part we need to watch what we say.
I hear the passion in your voice, and we have it too. I mean, one of the things I say a lot to young boys is true masculinity is a beautiful gift to the world. It's a magnificent gift. It's necessary. It's not tolerable, it's absolutely necessary. And we need to teach what true, authentic, true, lovely masculinity is. Njabulo, you say in your book, and I'm going to quote you directly, you say there, behind every statistic is a child who never healed, a man who never learned, and a generation repeating the same pain.
Yeah.
You say a boy neglected becomes a man addicted. A boy unloved becomes a man unable to love. A boy unheard becomes a man who shouts in anger just to feel seen. Powerful words.
Yeah.
There's so many beautiful quotes in all your books. It's really, we could be here all day. But please elaborate on that.
Yeah, so afternoon everyone, good to be here. So the problem that when I started on this journey to writing this book, what I did find is that a lot of boys out there want to become men. They want to be good. There's not a single boy that you sit down and you interview them and you ask them and say, when you grow up, do you want to be a good man who takes care of his family, who raises the society, who raises children, who wants to be a billionaire and change the world for the good? Every single one of them will tell you, yeah, every single one of them will tell you yes. But then now we've grown up in the society that says, again, men are trash, am I next? We all know that those are the problems. We've identified the problem is there, thank you very much, but what are we going to do about it? So that's why the subtitle of the book is, how do we build better men? This entire notion that we're going to have perfect men who do no wrong, who get everything right, who've got $1 billion in their bank account, they wake up at 5 a.m., they gym all the time, that ideal doesn't exist. But what we can drive the narrative to is, how do we build better men. And there are a lot of boys out there who want to become better men, but they've never been taught, they've never been socialized, and they also haven't been given a great role model as to what a good man actually looks like. And you blame people at the ages of 35, at 40, at 45, they're a menace to society, they're shouting out in anger, they're busy graffitiing the walls, they're joining gangs. The reason that exists is because you socialize us from when we were young. And like I speak to like a lot of, who here is a girl, is a dad, is a boy mom? Yes, got, yeah, you're a boy mom? Amazing, yeah. So a lot of boy moms that I've spoken to, I'll ask them, what do you think about men? And the first thing they'll say is, men are trash. So then now, that's a dichotomy of beliefs. What's happening now is that you are saying to this young boy when they get hurt, I love you, I want you to grow, I want you to become the best that you can become. But in the background, you're saying, men are trash, men are trash, men are trash. And then when they grow up to become 30, 35, 40, why are you surprised when they're acting like what you said that they would be? And a lot of men out there, they're not evil by nature. We're not evil.
No boy is born bad.
No boy is born bad. Maybe some men are evil, I don't know, but not all men are evil. But they are broken. And the problem is that a lot of men out there, they're not brave enough to face exactly whatever it is that broke them. So when you're seeing a boy or a man acting out in anger and GBV, that is a symptom of the problem. The actual problem is no one went to that boy and said, it is okay to be a man. Let's start there first. Where are all the men here? All the men, raise your hand. Say after me, it is okay.
It's okay.
Come on, it is okay. And it is good to be a man. Ah, thank you. Isn't that good? So to tell them that it's okay to be a man, it's good to be a man.
No, not just okay, it's necessary, it's good.
It's necessary. It's necessary for you to be a man. It's good for you to be a man. And you're not doing this by yourself. A lot of boys are crying out in anger. Like I say, a boy who's neglected becomes a boy addicted. If he doesn't find a good role model of a man inside the home, he's going to look for that in the street because we have this innate need for imitation. So what is it that we are going to imitate? Is it going to be the greatest good or is it going to be the greatest evil? So we need to start with the boys just to tell them that it is good for you to be a man. It is necessary. Take on the highest level of responsibility for yourself. It is hard, but it is necessary, and we need both the women, the mothers of society, to also jump on this train to change the narrative to say men can be trash, but more important, just say men, you can be better. You know when you give a young boy a responsibility to say, my mom used to say all the time. So when she would come home and she'd have like a boot full of groceries, and then she would say, then I'll go and just take one bag, and it's like 15 of them. And then she's like, you are Superman, you could do more. I will take like 6 of them. And then go in, and then come back, and she's like, yeah, Superman. I was like, that's nothing. You know what I mean? So you need to positively affirm them and give them a roadmap and a model, because if you don't do that, you're going to be getting...
You're going to grow up with real issues, yeah. I think I wrote extensively about gender-based violence, and there's a difference between a reason and an excuse. There's no excuse. But there are reasons, and if we understand the reasons, we can heal it. And for me, the two biggest reasons are, number one, wounded masculinity. We grew up wounded. And number two, false concepts of what it means to be a man. So, Marion, in your experience, men don't talk, men don't share, they don't. How can we get men to be more? How can we first teach men that vulnerability is not weakness? In fact, vulnerability takes a lot of courage. It's much easier for me to say I'm fine than to say I'm really struggling. How do we get men to shatter the silence, as you say in your book, and to open up and to talk about without shame? Because you also talk about how men are stigmatized. If I'm in an organization and I express weakness, statistics show that I have less chance of being promoted. So this is a systemic issue. How do we get to change that?
You're absolutely right. And it's not just men. When it comes to mental health, there's a stigma, an overall stigma that goes with it. I think for men, do definitely find it hard to speak out. I mean, if you hear from psychiatrists, psychologists, that only 10% of the people they see are men, 90% women. That does not mean that 90% more women suffer from problems than men. I know I'm married to a man. If I said to him, go to a therapist, and my daughter's a therapist, and my daughter-in-law is both clinical psychologists, he wouldn't. And he's been, talked about. He hears it.
He's been married to you for all these
But
years.
there you go. But he's typical South African rugby loving playing, and so I see it every day with him. And again in the book. But the ironic thing is, and the very sad thing is, what generally makes someone go and see a therapist or a psychiatrist, psychologist to get help is when they've exploded, when it's all been what you're saying, and very often it is how they've grown up, what's happened to them growing up. And there comes a point where you just can't keep it inside anymore. And I'll give you an example, although Chadler Clove was I think the first person I interviewed for that book, and I didn't know at the time when I'm speaking to him, he's in a hotel room in Germany training, because that's where he does his training. And he told me the story of how one night in his hotel room, there was so much expectation. I mean, here's a South African youngster who won more Olympic gold medals than any other South African. And every time, of course, he dives into that pool, he's got the weight of South African expectations on his shoulders, pretty much like, you know, the Springbok rugby team. It's a similar thing, and I've interviewed those guys too. And eventually, this caught up with him. At that moment in time, a few months before I interviewed him, he said he was in his hotel room and he was this close to taking his own life. And he comes from an amazing family, his mum and dad. You've probably seen him on his father on TV when he won those medals, going crazy. And he's a very special man. And something made him phone them. And thank God he did, because, you know, they were able to talk him down at that moment, get him on a plane the next day, get him back to South Africa. And as he said to me, and I don't know how many others, then for the first time, I went into a clinic and I understood what was going on with me. It wasn't just me. Why I started writing about mental health in the first place was from 30 odd years ago. I mean, I used to write, I was called a special reporter. I'd do big special reports. You know, things like sex trafficking and so on. And I did a story on mental health, but I knew nothing about mental health. And for the first time, my magazine editors would get phone calls saying, can I speak to that journalist that wrote that story? And they said to me, you know, I was so thrilled to read your story because all my family and friends think I'm just acting. They don't believe this is a real thing. And it's the same thing here. So these guys have grown up, as you said, thinking, no, come on, I'm a man. I don't do this. I don't have problems. I'm not going to go and talk to somebody about them. It's just how men especially have been brought up. I mean, I just lastly give a good instance. 3 South African men go into a pub and they talk about their emotional problems. Yeah, right. Never going to happen.
Maybe after a bottle of whiskey they did.
Well, it's possible. Even then, I don't think so. That's interesting, because that's what they would do, drink a bottle of whiskey.
Yeah. Well, that's how we deal with that stuff.
That's how you do it.
Yeah.
So it's dealing with to answer your overall question is, how do they deal with it? They don't. When they do, I've got one family member in this country, because I'm from England originally, he's a psychiatrist. We've got different names, so you won't know who he is. And he got divorced and he was going through a bad time. And he went to see a therapist, first time really in his life. He said he cried for 3 hours and he felt so much better. So there you
All
go.
the stuff coming out, yeah. Men are humans too. We have emotions, we have vulnerabilities, and, you know, we're taught not to be. Mzamo, I'm going to quote quite a long section from you. I've cobbled together a few things, and so worth reading all of these books. You say that breaking the cycle of men being called trash. And, you know, there's a lot of work being done to empower women in this country, which is fantastic, because men have stopped doing that. But we live in an either-or society, don't we? You know? It's either women or men. And instead of living in a both-and society, we have bringing a girl child to work, we have a ministry and a presidency for women, you know, but a lot of men are feeling left behind and unfathered. We talked a lot about the gangs in the Cape Flats. You know, a boy joining a gang is looking for a family. And the gang leader is the father he never had. The prison becomes the mother he never had. I mean, this is the tragedy we have. There's a reason for this. But I love what you say here, Mzamo. You say breaking the cycle will demand unprecedented courage. And I want you to speak to this, please. The courage to hold space for a black woman's safety without dismissing black boys' humanity. The courage to acknowledge black boys' trauma without minimizing the harm they may have caused. And without getting a get out of jail free card. You're very much going into the both and here, not the either or. We have focused rightly so on the challenges facing girls, but in the process we have forgotten boys. And now that boy is telling his story in rage, in absence, in addiction, in pain, excessively bleeding on people who did not cut him. I love the way you put that. Empowering girls is non-negotiable. No one's saying we shouldn't. But healing boys is just as urgent. We cannot raise half a future and expect a whole one. Beautifully put. We cannot ignore the emotional wounds of our boys and still hope for peace, progress, or prosperity. because a truly healed society sees all its children and saves them all. Firstly, well said. And secondly, how do we do this? What is that unprecedented courage we need, and what are the practical steps we need to take to actually change this narrative? We're living in a wounded nation, and we need to heal our nation.
I think the first one is we need to learn to stop the gender pain Olympics. Because we're in a gender pain Olympics. As soon as you say, this one's suffering, then this one's be like, yeah, but girls too. You're like, but no one said that. No one said, when I say black people are suffering, this one's gonna say, yeah, but white people too. And no one said white people are not suffering. Why do we have some binary mindset that doesn't allow for dialectical maturity? It's like all of us need dialectical behavioral therapy. A group one, South Africa dialectical behavioral therapy, so that we can juggle with multiple truths. So that when I say one truth, it doesn't discount another truth. We can have multiple truths at once. Girls need continued empowerment. It needs to continue. I have 3 daughters. Yet, when I look at my 3 daughters, I used to lecture at varsities. Close to 70% of graduates are female. Only less than 44% of boys wrote grade 12 last year. Grade 10, the highest dropout rate is boys. At grade 3 to 4, the people who can't read for meaning, write, maths, all it's boys. Now I have 3 daughters, and I'm looking at them and knowing that when they date or marry, these ones who are failing and falling behind, they're gonna come and tell me, no, I'm doing crypto. I'm doing Bitcoin, and that's the hustle. So I just like, I'll die like just a father. So mine is, can we have a more dialectical maturity as a nation where when I say a truth, it doesn't discount other truths. They are also valid. When I say boys are failing and falling behind, I am saying nothing against girls. That's the first thing for me. The second one is we also have a flawed logic. When I say girls are thriving, some men are hearing me as saying, therefore, men are ascending or declining. So somehow they've done a causality that doesn't exist, that a rise of women leads to a decline of men. Hey, this is why we shouldn't do maths lit. Because there's something cognitively wrong with that logic.
We can all rise.
It is, because we can both rise at the same time. Then the other area for me is just, if you have nothing good to say about someone, say nothing. If we can start with verbal violence, we have a long way, we've solved a lot. If you just say nothing, please, I'm begging, and just bite your tongue. Even I have a boy, it's like 600 in my NGO. One of them comes and said, I said to my grandmother, and my grandmother was standing next to his grandfather, and I said, oh, my dad is the hero, and his grandmother was rolling his eyes. And I said, hey, this violence is verbal, it's non-verbal, it's physical, and kids are reading us all the time. So you have nothing good. And then the last one to me on this one is, people assume that fathers who are absent are intentionally and deliberately absent. There's a thing when I haven't met a human being who wakes up and say, oh, I can't wait to damage my kids today. Oh, I'm looking forward to it. I haven't met that person. There's 1%, they should be in fucking hospital, that 1%. But the 99%, what I've found with men is when you tell men who are absent, who, by the way, what happened to them? Their father was also absent. So absent men or boys with absent fathers tend to be men who are absent in their kids' lives. Now when I tell them, by the way, did you know that there are 50 negative consequences on you being absent in your boy's life? Then I tell them the top 10, and then the man says, oh shit, no one conscientized me about this. I didn't know. And we forget that when you know better, you do better. And we haven't done enough to conscientize men, but we do a lot. When we had COVID-19. All of us, we were being educated here, put the mask, elbow, do this 5-step. Everyone had something they were conscientized on, but for some reason we think we shouldn't conscientize men to know better so that they can do better. I think that's my interest.
Wonderful. As I said, we could go on for hours. I love to use the analogy of a motor vehicle for masculinity. The motor vehicles are great gifts. We use them every time. We all came here in a motor vehicle, but they're also dangerous. You need someone who knows how to drive a car to teach you how to drive a car. And masculinity is exactly the same. You need a man to teach a young boy how to be a man. There are things that I can't teach my daughter that my wife needs to teach her. There are things that my wife cannot teach my son that she needs me as a man to teach her. And that's why the perfect model of society is a man and a woman raising children. Both boys and girls need both fathers and mothers. Unfortunately, it doesn't have to be a biological father. It can be an uncle, a grandfather. I mean, teachers and coaches play a massive role. But our boys are growing up unvalidated by men and untaught how to be a man. And so, Njabulo, I love what you say in your book. You preface many of the chapters of your book with the words, when I grew up, I had my dad.
Yeah.
You know? When I grew up, I had my dad. And that's a beautiful thing. Young boys need older men to teach them how to be a man. You know, a car can only be driven by someone you can't learn how to drive a car by watching a YouTube clip. You know, you can't learn how to be a man by watching Andrew Tate or any of these things. You know, thank God for that. But you need a man who knows how to be a man, who's learned how to be a man, who was taught how to be a man, imparting that masculinity. Talk a bit about that. I love that. You know, when I grew up, I had my dad.
Yeah, 100%. So, for me personally, I was blessed, fortunate enough to have a very strong and present father in my life. So that's the last section of the book is just a tribute and a love letter to my father and lessons that I learned from him, the good and the bad and those that shaped me. So that's why I had to preface each one of those chapters. When I grew up, I had my dad. And I cannot take away the positive impact of having, not just having my present father, but also a present and a strong father, and a present, strong, and scary father in my life to instill that sense of self-worth, that sense of self-discipline, and to make sure that he does the best for me for what he didn't have. Now, what people don't know, they'll say, you're lucky enough you had your father in your life. I'm like, okay, great, but if you know the story about my dad, he didn't know who his father was. Because he died while he was still in the womb. So my father made the conscious decision, and again, fatherhood and masculinity is a decision. He made the decision that my children are going to know me, and he made sure, because my older brother, his name is Temba, and my middle name is James, so when he passed away, he made sure that he's still around. So for him, he made the decision. He didn't have a strong enough model around him because his dad passed away. But fortunately for him, he made a decision, so he went and he found the mentors. He had 6 brothers. Not all of them were on the straight and narrow, but he had the 6 brothers that were around him to show him, this is where you go, and this is what you should do, and this is what you shouldn't do. Now, a lot of men and boys may start using the excuse to say, my father was absent, my father wasn't there. Now, to that is tragic. It is, your pain is validated, your pain is very real. To that, it is not an excuse, because there are a lot of people who have done many great things who had no father figure in the initial periods of their life. For example, Kevin Hart, one of my favorite comedians, his father was on drugs. LeBron James, one of the greatest basketball players ever, his father, we all know where his father is, but he's a very great person in society. So a lot of men and boys who were in research of this book and just looking around will say, I didn't have my father. What should I do? What can I do? So that is the call to responsibility of you being an adult, because whether your father was there or your father wasn't there, or your mother was there or your mother wasn't there, it is still on you to be your own hero, to be your own parent. Because some people have parents that were present in their lives every single day and they still become deviants. I was like, sorry guys, you did your best, but then they still made the decision to be a deviant. And those people who didn't have a strong mother and father figures in their life, they still made a decision that I'm going to do the right things. A couple of things that these people who had absentee fathers, who stick with absentee fathers, who became great fathers, to be able to change the trajectory, they made a note of what it is that they didn't get from their father. He wasn't there to give them the leadership, the mentorship, the guidance, the money. They went through the process like, I'm going to cry and I'm going to grieve that I didn't have my father. And then they made a decision to say, what is it that I needed? Because people will go through their entire lives and not take an inventory of what they needed. and then they start acting out in unbecoming ways. For example, people who join gangs and they start shooting people, what they need a sense of self-worth and a sense of self-significance. Because if I have a gun and I point it to you, how significant am I to you? 10 out of 10, I'm very significant. So they didn't have that significance. So they make a list of what it is that they didn't get. And then they made a decision to be my own hero, not just by myself, because there's a lot of mentors out there. There's a lot of ministers, there's a lot of preachers, there's a lot of therapists that you can go through for them to take the step to reparent yourself. Because whether your father was there, whether your father wasn't there, I can guarantee you've got some daddy issues. Everyone's got some daddy issues. So it's on your onus now for you to be your own hero. One of the lessons that I documented from my dad, Freud said that a man cannot be a man until his father dies. Not physically, but maybe symbolically. There's one time I went to my dad and I asked him, because my father normally had all the answers to what I should do, what I should eat, how I should speak to people. And then he said to me, "Hey, I'm sorry, my man, I don't know what to do." I'm like, "What? You don't know what to do, Mr. Doctor having psychologist. So we couldn't do anything wrong because we knew what sort was happening. You don't know the answer. What am I supposed to do?" And that was the first time I realized I'm going to have to certain things I'm going to have to figure out. And when he didn't know the answer, he would take a book and give me the book and say, "Read after Malcolm X, read after Martin Luther King, read after Mandela, read after Bill Gates, and read after all these other people."
Find out for yourself
Who've gone the journey. And if you want to achieve something that I can't give you, you can find the answer. But ultimately, you making the decision that I'm going to be my own father figure, and sort of like quote unquote save myself, help people to help me there. It starts with a decision. What happened to you in the past may be valid, but it's not an excuse to stop you from moving forward.
I love what you say there. I think it's incumbent upon us as men and women to break the generational cycle.
Yeah.
It starts with me. We do a lot of work in communities around South Africa with men, and we run what we call healing circles, and we get men to talk. And one of the things we say to them is, it's up to you to break the cycle. Denzel Washington said, "Be the man you wish your father was." And I think that's exactly what you said. We need to do that. But in order to do that, we need the role models. We need the people to teach us and show us how to do that. Barry, in your space, how do we break the cycle? Because psychological issues and wounds are generally passed down, aren't they? I said earlier, none of us arrive at adulthood whole. My generation of fathers was the kind of father that he's there, but he's not there. He's physically present, but there's no emotional engagement. I still remember the time when I climbed onto his lap. I must have been 8 years old or something, and he literally said, "No, boys don't do that." There was so his wounds from his dad passed down onto me. And if we're not conscious and aware and look in the mirror and really examine ourselves, we perpetuate that. How do we do that in your experience with breaking, not just breaking the silence, but breaking the cycle of intergenerational woundedness?
I think we're doing it right here.
Yeah.
It's having conversations, men not being afraid to talk about it. I was very lucky with my book. I got a lot of publicity on a lot of TV, radio, and so on. And that was it. Why do I write these books? I write them to start conversations. My father, also interestingly, was an amazing father. And well, of course I'm a girl, but I had 2 older brothers. We had so much love and so on. But my father came from a family, very British, colonial, I'm embarrassed to tell you, British Army. And his father, they called him Sir. We used to go to my grandparents and you had to sit, children were seen and not heard. So he grew up like that, but he broke that because he knew that, no, I don't want to be like that. And I think that happens quite a lot. In terms of my research, breaking that barrier between being brought up as being the man, and like if you fall over, you don't cry. If you don't do well at a sport game, you don't sulk, you just carry on. You can't live your life not crying and, being that strong man, and eventually will erupt. I feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over again. And I have noticed that younger men today are going to therapists. I think it is changing. I'll give you an example. About 2000, before that, when did Men's Health magazine start? In the 1990s. And I worked extensively helping to get Men's Health going with the editor, Paul Curtin. He was wonderful, he was a fabulous editor. And I said to him one day, can we do a story about men and depression? He said, we know that would just depress our readers. In 2005, when I was very lucky to get a Carter Mental Health Journalism Fellowship from the Carter Center in America, who were absolutely amazing, helping break the stigma, Mrs. Carter, Rosalind Carter, of mental health, I went then to he'd long gone, and I went to the new editors, and I said, I want to do 3 special reports, break one on men and mental health, on suicide, and we decided to do one on what's called general anxiety disorder, which people don't even realize is a disorder. What it is, simple things like, you go out of your house, did I lock that door? It's not OCD, it's not obsessive compulsive disorder. It's something so little in a way, but it can affect your life so badly. So just as an example, anyway, I came back and I did these stories, and I was surprised, found men were happy for me to use their real names. Because in South Africa before that, men and women, I wrote Fair Lady and so on, you put a little star by the name. And these guys were all happy to give their names. I was quite surprised. Our sub-editor phoned me in a flat and said, Marion, didn't you mean to change these names? Surely these people, no. I said they were all happy, and that makes such a difference.
It seems like changing.
It makes a difference because people realize, like in my book, those are real people, and that's what counts.
Fantastic. Mzamo, one last thing, then we'll open up the floor for questions. Men are crying out to be taught what it means to be a man. So many confusing messages. On the one extreme, you have toxic masculinity, which is domineering, I use women, which is completely false. On the other side, you have passive masculinity, which is also not true. We need men not to be passive. In fact, someone wrote that the opposite of masculinity is not femininity, the opposite of masculinity is passivity, because we're not designed. And so I wrote a thing called the 6-pack of masculine virtues. It's nice to have a 6-pack here, but that fades, and the most important 6-pack is the one inside. And for me, men need to be both a warrior and a lover. The warrior is resolute, strong, takes responsibility, is tough, and sometimes it's not appropriate to cry because you need to do stuff and your daughter needs you to be strong. But that's only half. The other side is the lover, which is the emotionally literate, the caring, the empathetic, the appropriately vulnerable. Give us a quick, 30-second summary or maybe 2-minute summary. What does it mean to be a man?
In my village, they say the idea that a human being cannot be a lion and a lamb in one soul is flawed. I can be a lion because I need to know when to clap you badly. I need to know when to defend myself, when to protect, when to defend, but I also need to know when to be a lamb. Just like Jesus Christ, if you're a Christian here, Jesus, you call him the lamb, but you also call him the Lion of Judah. So he can be Lion of Judah, and he can be the Lamb of Christ, one guy. So why can't men be the same? The only thing that we are not being taught is discernment on when to be a lion and when to be a lamb. That part no one's teaching. We are either being taught to be lions or be a lamb, but the two never meet. Because somehow they will eat each other. So I'm more for the younger we are taught at a younger age. Like when I joined Boy Scouts and I joined like karate things or altar boy, there we were being taught scripturally what it means to be a man that is holy and holy. And then when I go to Boy Scouts, we're just doing knots and lashings and swimming the hell out and climbing mountains and burning the testosterone because our brains are not yet fully developed. The testosterone is fast and it says run. The mountain, it's okay. You see so we need the end. Yes. And I genuinely feel like if mothers could, the best for me we can do for boys is keep us busy and let us sweat. Sure, if you don't let us sweat, the testosterone takes over and it says run to the door, even though the brain is not yet developed. And that's another part I think society has stopped doing is biology is biology. Our brains as males develop. Unfortunately, I don't know why God did it slower than females.
Yes.
I don't know why God did it, it's not fair, but it is what it is. Our prefrontal cortex, especially this executive function.
Speak for yourself.
I know, it's yours as well. It's slow. I don't know why it takes so long to think the future. I have a 15-year-old nephew I'm raising. I put them home with my daughters, and they play tea party at age 8 or 7. After 5 minutes, he comes to me and says, "Yo, uncle, I can't do it." They are talking about a future they see themselves in. And then I realize his prefrontal cortex just can't go that far. What it wants is just kick the ball and run. And I hope now, today, we can all admit that there are biological differences between boys and girls and stop this nonsense of biological equality.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. Let us ban our testosterone, man. And same with school. Can we have more breaks for us? We can't be sitting for 8 hours listening to someone writing. The testosterone. I have a boy I coach. He calls me, "Uncle, I had an erection today in class. I don't understand it because there was nothing nice on the board. And it's not like I'm attracted to the teacher either. But the erection just came. What's going on, uncle? I'm scared." And now I'm like, break. Can you give that boy a break? Let him go run. The testosterone, sweat. Then when he's done, he can come back to the... Why is school so long anyway? And you're killing our boys with this 8-hour, 9-hour school. So those are the things I want us to...
We need to change.
To change.
We need to change and understand. You know, my son, when he was 10 years old, he was hanging outside after school with a bunch of mates on their BMX bicycles, bored. And the one kid suggested, "I wonder what would happen if we rode into that brick wall over there. Let's have a competition." So they lined up, and the winner was the one who hit the wall first. The testosterone, I mean, there's no ration. So they lined up, counted down 5, 4, 3, and you can imagine what's going through their brain. I want to win, which means I'm going to hit the wall fast, and I'm going to be the most sore. But they did it, they did it. And the reaction of the parents was so funny. The moms were freaking out. No, calling Johnny needs more Ritalin, and the dads were like, "Well, that's my boy." But let's throw open to the floor. Any questions for our wonderful panel? There's a roving mic. I see there's a question at the back there.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Roland Mzamo. I'm a book reviewer.
Yes. Hello.
2 comments from my side. The first one is around inner child healing. The second one is around finding a common ground as men, women, and so forth. So, with inner child healing, on my side, I went through some depressive moments. I grew up in a rural village where things were fine with my grandparents, but moving to the township, then also experienced abuse from my father. My father was quite abusive and alcoholic and so forth. So I went through wanting to figure out the anger because he passed on, and my parents divorced, and I was like, how is he passing on? And he needs to chill around and be punished somehow to deal with his stuff. So I was very angry as a teenager because he passed on at that time. But I had to work on it, found a life coach that helped me around that position there. But now being older and having a family and going through issues within the family and marriage and so forth, the inner child came knocking. That, 8-year-old who was smacked around by my father, and now my father to a 10-year-old, and I struggled to connect with him, to say, how do I become a father now? Because my father was abusive, and how do I engage with him? So I needed to find a reference that will help me to actually be a father. So my grandfather, Umkhulu, the one that I grew up with in the rural areas, became that example. And then the inner child kept knocking again. And where now I went to a deep depressive state, suicidal thoughts and so forth, where I felt alone, that no one understood what I'm going through, which is the points that you were touching on, that I'm self-employed, I run my own business, I'm the breadwinner at the house, so there's all this pressure, and I need to parent, I need to do all those things. But when I now explain my vulnerabilities, no one believes me. It's like, no, but you're fine, you're privileged, you have this, you have that, and you're good to go. So I felt alone, and those depressive moments came in, and it wasn't like severe depression, but it was on the scale of that, where you literally feel alone. But now the inner child is knocking. It's like, see me, recognize me. So I needed to figure out a way to connect the adult self and the inner child now, so that I become a whole person and accept myself, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything as a whole person, for me to be able to move forward. And when you spoke about breaking that generational thing, because what could have happened to me, I could have went the other route of violence and destruction, but then somehow I was pulled into concepts of self-love, reflecting on the journey I've taken, reflecting on that, the references that I used as men in my life, and discerning between good and bad in terms of men. So working on that inner child very much helped me. Through therapy, of course, I had to name the inner child, the 8-year-old. I had to give him a name and make sure that he feels safe now, that you no more that kid who's gonna be anxious when challenges come to life. So let's work together. So yeah, so that's my first comment there.
Can I just interrupt? Can you jump to a question if you have one? And then let's just, there's a couple of other people.
Oh,
we
okay.
really are short in time.
Oh, sorry about that. I'll do, okay. So the second one was around common ground. How do we find common ground as men and women? Because we are all broken. And the way you explained around the gender competition shouldn't be there. So my question is around that. How exactly do we find that? Because a man will express their vulnerabilities, but they get shut down. A woman would also want to express, but also there's complications there. So how do we find a common language where we're not bashing each other, but understanding our wounds?
That's a great question. Anyone like to take that?
I think I'll leave it to you guys more.
The way it was explained to me, it was the love for each other begins at the end of our conflict and competition. So we cannot have this, even for the child, when two elephants fight, the grass suffers. So same, when two adults fight, the child, I'm that child. I grew up in a very violent home. And so you become that kid with Switzerland and trying to make everyone happy and conflict avoidant. Like I run. As soon as conflict starts, I'm out. So you see, like, so I think the common ground that we establish is the part where stop wanting to get the gold medal for pain, and that I must get the bronze for pain. Pain is pain, and there's no grandstanding on pain. And if we can just stop this thing that, oh, you get a gold medal, you shouldn't even be in the podium.
No competition.
Yeah, there's no competition in pain. We're all having pain, it's just different levels of pain. So if we can start with this ending conflict and competition, and if it's black people, our complication is we had apartheid and we had a unified enemy that we can look at. And apartheid, now we have to look at each other and still deal with the issue of what happened to us. That's complicated and layered. So you can't also ignore that there's historical, political context. And then there's us with each other as black people, loving each other, you being united, forming a new social contract on black love that is more healthier and less violent, especially verbally violent. So I think it's the ending the competition that I really need. And it starts with me, by the way, because I hear myself sometimes. I go in the... Like, even when I talk with white people, I'm good at, like, remember what you did. And then you know I'm checkmating a white person quickly. But then I'm not building bridges.
They call it the race card.
Yeah, no, I can throw it easily. Like, if as soon as I know it's because I'm black, and then I see the white person turning red, like, really struggling now to defend themselves. Because what did I do? I didn't build the bridge.
Yeah, so I can also just quickly add to that as well. So how do we find common ground? The key word there is one, it's common. You have feelings, I have feelings. and how we can come together and help each other through our feelings. Stephen Covey said, well, seek first to understand first, then to be understood. A lot of people are selfish in saying, because I'm hurt, because I'm going through this, your pain is not validated until my pain is dealt with. However, we can all heal by first understanding, okay, what I said to you hurt you, and also what you did to me hurt me. And once we can have that open and honest dialogue to say, person X was hurt because of what happened, and person Y was hurt because of what happened, and it doesn't mean that just because you don't understand the other person's pain doesn't negate that they've been through pain. And everyone goes through pain, we just process and go through it differently. So having open and honest conversations, for example, if you have a disagreement with your wife, sit down, have your glass of wine, buy her flowers and the chocolates and say, honey, what you said, I didn't land well with me, and she can also have the same conversation. And we can, I need to scale the conversation by first, I need to understand where this person is coming from first, and before I want them to understand me first. And then if we both have that mindset of reciprocity, that's when we can find a common ground.
So another thing with, I can't fight. Like, I can't fight right. Like, I am really bad. Like, I just become emotionally dysregulated when it comes to fighting. I just think of my 9-year-old boy running around saving my mom, blood everywhere. I just get dysregulated. So what did I need to do? I was sent to a course called Fight Right. And then I was given a book, 2 books I had to read. Radical Candor, I think how to be forthright with care and respect. And then I had to read the Gottman Fight Right. Then I go to a course. So there is a need also for training, because we have an inherent assumption that we're just gonna know how to fight. I've never seen my parents fight and reconcile effectively.
There is such thing as a good, clean, healthy
Yes,
fight.
we should fight. Fight is good because it means we care, but fighting right, that takes training. And especially if you've never seen your parents fight right. Mine, Aisham, no fight right, 0 skill.
Let's
on fight.
into
So that's
more.
the training I think we need.
I think the challenge with us men is that we would go to our wife and say, honey, we need to talk. And she'll say, oh, what have you done wrong? And she'll come to us and say, honey, we need to talk. And I'll say, what have I done wrong? You know, it's always me, the man, who's done wrong. I think a very key answer to your question is that if we see ourselves as human first, before anything else, before I'm anything else, I'm a human being. And as that is our value, that's our identity, primarily human. And then we had some people come to our office, a woman who attached electrodes to your body as a man to simulate period pains. It was a horrible experience, but it was an incredible exercise in empathy. Because all of us, they got to 50, and around 30 we would say, oh no, enough. But what it did do is help us as men to empathize and understand. And I think empathy is an absolute key. There are issues that men have that are more pronounced than women, and the issues that women have that are more pronounced than men. And if we understand those issues, and understand we're human first, it leads very much to that. I think we had a question over there.
Thanks. Andrew here. So on the topic of role models, I think it's something that is really lacking in our society at the moment. If we go back and we look 100, 200 years ago, it was normal as a boy, you would go either to your dad's work or your dad's friend's work and learn to become, a woodmaker or a carpenter or something like that. In the current society, with the type of work we do, we've become very sort of singular, and we don't have that environment for boys to go to on a daily basis to see how men work, and through that they get the training on how to behave as a man. How would you recommend we start correcting that in our society?
Njabulo?
All right, cool. Yeah, so the first stance we can have in terms of correcting that is, again, a lesson I got from my own father, is before you can go after something, you need to know what it is. And then after that, you need to know where to go and find it. So once you know, I want to understand what is an example of a good man. And the second question is, where do I go and actually find it? And what we're doing, the work that each and every single one here, what all the authors are doing here, is that we're shining a light on what it looks like to be a very good man. And if we can point people to what a good example of what a good man is collectively and on a consistent basis, we start changing the trajectory of this red pill toxic masculinity trope, which I'm basically tired of myself, because it's giving everybody really a bad rap. And then also the A word in terms of accountability is very, very important. Men have got this thing, and I'll say this, I'll just out us all out here, is that, sorry, I'm going to say it in front of everybody publicly.
You're on your own.
we can be notorious liars to each other and not hold each other accountable to the high standard that we profess to live by. For example, you'll see your best friend going and doing nonsense out there, and listen to the gents out there, the men out there, and you will say absolutely nothing. And then you come and you complain, you say, hey, some other, my daughter's boyfriend is acting like nonsense. However, you are not calling out your best friend for the nonsense that they are doing out there, when you know what the standard is. So once we all know exactly what the standard is, and a modernized, not a modernized standard, but like a timely standard of what it is now. Because if you look at how masculinity is shaped now, it's different to the 1920s and 1930s. A woman can work and they sometimes earn more money than we do. So now they don't need your money. Sometimes they don't need you to protect. They've got their own tasers, their own pepper sprays. They don't need you to physically protect them. So after that, what is it that a woman needs? And what they will tell you is that they need the provision of leadership, they need protection, they need the guidance, and they need the focus. And so once we start rooting our identities outside of how big our bank account is and how big our wallets are, then we can start having a role model in what a good man looks like. So know what exactly it is that you want, where it is to find it, and please let us all hold each other vociferously accountable to the highest standard of masculinity that we profess.
Now I know, I just want to say, now I know where my two brothers never wanted me to go out with any of their friends. They knew.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also if you're a black boy or colored boy, and 7 out of 10 black boys have no father at home. Yeah. 5 out of 10 colored boys no father at home. For me, then the next part is social fathers.
Yeah.
It's social fathers. You then need,
which is up to you and I.
Men must adopt boys. Men at work must volunteer to say to the single parent, hey, you're raising a boy, I'm going to a camp, can I take a boy with you?
Yeah.
So there's that part. Then the second one, if you can't find the social fathers, clubs. Clubs saved me. If I didn't join Boy Scouts, me and drugs were friends. I would have been now in prison in Baltimore or dead. Clubs. So if you can't find it, just keep your boy busy in a club. And then if a parent says to me, but I'm scared my boy will get raped or molested, then I say to them, you haven't looked at the data. 93% of molestation of boys happens in your house. It's your uncle, your aunt, it's never strangers. It's people we know who rape us. So the idea that you're scared that you're going to send your child to strangers and they're going to get raped, it goes against data.
I think we are running out of time. Are we okay for another 5 minutes, everybody? A few more questions. There's a question over there.
One here. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay. You got the mic there, huh? There's a woman over there. Yeah? We will all be available after the session for at least half an hour if you want to come and chat and to sign the books as well. But let's have
a lady.
Let's have
over here.
a lady over there.
Okay. Can I ask my question? Or,
Ask it quickly, then we'll pass the mic.
okay, just very quickly. I come from a community where gender-based violence is very prevalent. My grandfather beat my gran. My dad beat my mum. And I took a conscious decision that I would not perpetuate that cycle. My question to you is, in the community I came from, and many others I'm sure, that cycle is being perpetuated. How do we get more men to take that conscious decision not to carry on that cycle?
Well, I think again,
30 seconds
just
also?
one, conversations. You're here today and you're talking about it. Tell people, make people aware, start your own support group.
Yeah, I mean, the louder we speak about it, the better. And by the way, congratulations to you for stopping the cycle. That's what we're there to do as men. But the more awareness there is, the more press there is, the more media there is, the more voices like us.
Group. There'll be so many people that will
It needs to
support you.
become a known social issue, this is not okay, and let's stop it. You know, so shout out loud. You know, use your social media. Shout out loud. Get me. There's a question. Yeah.
Yes.
Two
Good
ladies.
afternoon, everyone. You can come after me. Quick question. Thank you very much. Those books sound amazing. Did you, and I'm curious about how you did it in your books, you can answer as briefly as you can. Did you think about early experiences? Because I think mental health isn't something that begins when a boy is 10 years old or 12 years old. Did you delve into that, and how?
Yeah, interesting. In other books, especially with bullying, why I wrote the book on bullying is because many stories I did, and this wasn't just with guys, of course it was with girls as well, came from initial bullying. And of course, with South African boys, they're taught to fight back. Is that always the answer? In your mind, if you're told as a child, you come home from school and you tell your dad you're bullied, you go and show that guy. You know, don't take nonsense from them. And yet, very much it starts in childhood. Well, people never think of the words childhood and mental health. It's my next book. And it's being sponsored by a big overseas company. We're doing a massive campaign on youth and mental health, starting from young children. So it definitely starts there. And so if you have kids and you know something's wrong, don't wait until they're older and then they have problems. Do something about it.
Yeah, for me, it was poverty and inequality. I started there because I was like, no one talks about poverty and inequality. Everyone's like, you need therapy. How are you going to afford it if you're broke? So the poverty and inequality, especially for men, the reason Cape Town has the highest murder rate, it's inequality, partly. Because poverty doesn't make people just aggressive. If it was, then Eastern Cape would have the highest murder rate. But you go to the provinces that have the highest inequality, you will see more physical aggression in men. So how does that shape us? Then I look at my mom, when she was pregnant, how anxious was she? What was going on in her? Why no one talks about we come out of our mother's womb the way we are, partly because something was going on. Was my father abusive to my mother while she was pregnant? Was the anxiety, was the depression while I was in her womb? So when I come out, the child that I am, why is everyone shocked? You see, I started there, and then I start moving the house, no father, violent places. Then I start going to all these places that shaped me to be the person that I am now.
Early childhood trauma plays a massive, massive role. And the most important individuals in creating good mental health are the parents. The mother and the father are the architects of their home. And it starts in the womb, as you say. It starts in those early years, absolutely crucial. And that's why the journey from baby to boy and girl and boy to man and woman is the primary source of all of this issue. Let's jump over there. You've been waiting.
So I'm actually curious. There seems to be a little bit of like a defensiveness around the concepts of like patriarchy and toxic masculinity. I'm actually curious to find out why, because I mean, we can see there are systemic issues that, you know, affect guys, and you know, I think we can see that patriarchy does exist. But how do you guys actually intend to grapple with these issues if you're not really able to actually grapple with it?
Yes.
You want to start?
Yeah. So I can go with that. So there's a chapter of the book where I talk about this specifically on social justice warriors and quote unquote snowflakes, right? So you would have heard of Dr. Jordan B. Peterson when he was having a conversation, and the lady who was interviewing him said we need to grapple with the hierarchy and patriarchy, and he was like asking exactly what it is do you mean by patriarchy, because if you look at the data, it's also in your book, if you look at the data, most of the people who die in wars are men, most of the people in prison are men, most of the people who die of violent crimes are men, most people who drop out are men, most of the people who work on the low-level jobs are men, most people who commit suicide are men. So exactly what is it in terms of the patriarchy that you're talking about here? A lot of quote-unquote extreme feminists, they'll look at the privileges of society and they want to equalize those. But would they also want to equalize the murder rates as well as people in prison? So if you want the full-on quote-unquote the equality, you have to look across the board and not just look at this one monolithic vision of it. And the reason there is a sense of defensiveness is that I was on a webinar where we were talking about sexual harassment in the workplace. And the men who go through false sexual harassment accusations is astounding. And the false rape reports that are going against men is astounding. And all you need as a man is to have one person come up with a false report that you raped them, and then your entire life is now gone. So that's why it seems to be a lot of defensiveness. That's why in the workplace I'm like, I'm just going to say hi. I'm not going to be, come across and give you a side hug or whatnot, because it's going to come across, because the way the society now is like, come across is that as a man, you're already on the back foot because you're perceived to be a patriarchal man. So the problem. So how I grappled with it is, let's look at the facts and the data across the board. Does patriarchy exist? In certain instances it does, but a lot of men are going through a lot of hard times out there, and you also need to shine a light on what is going wrong with men, and also what is also going right with men. So if you look at a lot of defensiveness, is because a lot of men have gone through a lot of atrocities simply because they are men. No other reason that they are men.
So, the people who, when I wrote the book, the people who bashed me the most are 18 to 35-year-old ladies with no kids. Once you have a boy and you read that book, gender studies and feminism theory, you throw it out because you have a data at home and you have a problem that's failing and falling behind at home. So you don't over-intellectualize issues. Now, for me, if you're going to come to a black guy and you say, it's because of patriarchy, I ask you up front, like, are you building bridges or are you pathologizing me? What are you doing? Are you here to build a bridge? Are you here to help me heal? Or are you just going to label me with a word? And that's reductionist, because that oversimplifies my manhood. If you're just going to say patriarch, then I'm going to ask you, if my forefathers for 350 years in this country were exploited colonially and under apartheid, which patriarchy are you talking about? Starting 1994 forward, or starting 350 years ago? When my grandfather lost land twice, and he was emasculated and he died from sadness, which patriarchy are we talking about? So I feel like we lack historical, political, economic context when we use words we borrow from Benin Bras in 1965, and we bring them here without context. That it's not defensiveness, it's just that the way you are using the terminology doesn't build bridges. It silences men. Because as soon as you throw the word toxic masculinity, patriarchy, misogyny, what we know as men, including 15-year-olds, shut the fuck up, say nothing, and keep it moving. Does that help? Then you're going to have the red pill. Then you're going to have the Manosphere, because what do? We go underground. And we go bubble there and talk amongst our toxic selves without the help of your help. So I'm not saying that patriarchy doesn't exist, because if I define it and you say it's a system designed to serve men, does such a system exist? Yes. But I struggle when you're just going to throw the word and checkmate someone to no debate. It doesn't improve dialogue for me. It doesn't improve debate at all. It just ends it. And if that's what you want, then you haven't done anything to make society better. You've just checkmate us into silence.
Yeah, and also the power of questions is important, and the intent of from where the dialogue question comes from. My father always asked me, do you want to build or do you want to destroy? Which is it that you want to do? And then once you pick the intention of saying I want to build, then the dialogue goes that way. And now, well, people have used the word patriarchy just to destroy. I've never had anyone come and ask about patriarchy who actually wants to actively build. So.
We are sadly out of time. We have to stop, but we will be available outside to chat, answer any questions. Apologies to the young guy here who asked me, we'll be here. Okay. But thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for the wonderful panel. Appreciate it.